Hey, don't be deceived. Raspberry Pi only sounds like some tasty, tantalizing pie. It ain't anything close to that. Oops, I didn't mean to break your heart, but Raspberry Pi is what you can call a cornerstone of the tinkering community. And yeah, it is used for computing and programming, basically. Ooh, well, you could call that tantalizing too. We'll be talking more about Raspberry Pi in this video, but before then, do well to subscribe to this channel and hit the post notification button so you don't miss out on our juicy, timely updates. Now, Raspberry Pis. What are they? What can you do with them? What are their applications? Are they useful for everyday living? And many, many more. Let's go! What is Raspberry Pi? Just think about your computer in a teeny-weeny, super tiny size and you'd have a better idea of what Raspberry Pis are. You don't get it? Okay, chill. Here, the Raspberry Pi is a low-cost computer, with the largest being about the size of a credit card and the smallest being just a little bit larger than a meter rule. It plugs into a computer monitor or TV and makes use of a standard keyboard and mouse. From browsing the internet and playing high-definition HD video to making spreadsheets, word processing, and playing games, a Raspberry Pi is capable of doing everything you'd expect a desktop computer to do. Incredible, right? Well, that's just the truth. It is a capable little device that enables people of all ages to explore computing and to learn how to program in languages like Scratch and Python. As if these are not exciting enough, the Raspberry Pi has the ability to interact with the outside world. You heard that correctly. It has been used in a number of digital maker projects, from music machines and parent detectors to weather stations and tweeting birdhouses with infrared cameras. Who else wants to see kids use this stuff? Because truly, I want to see the Raspberry Pi being used by zillions of kids all over the world to learn programming and understand how the computer works. Come off it, this ain't any hallucination, it's very much possible. Now wait, here's something different about Raspberry Pi you should know. Unlike most popular computers on the market that run Windows or Mac operating systems, Raspberry Pi runs something called Linux as its desktop operating system. To be exact and more specific, it's a version of Linux called a Raspbian, and it's designed particularly for the Raspberry Pi. Not all Pis are created equal. There are lots and lots of versions out there, so you need to get just what suits your need and what is right for you. People use Raspberry Pis here, there, and everywhere to learn programming skills, build hardware projects, do home automation, and even in industrial applications. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's more. There are a couple of other projects you can tackle with Raspberry Pi, and that's exactly what I'll be showing you next. Come with me. What can you do with a Raspberry Pi? People build Raspberry Pi for different reasons, but trust me, there are lots and lots of things you can do with this computer. While some use it to learn how to code, others who have already mastered the art of coding use it to code electronics for physical projects. The Raspberry Pi can open opportunities for you to create your own home automation projects, which is popular among people in the open source community because it puts you in control rather than using a proprietary closed system. Indeed, a veritable golden age of computers is once again upon us. Raspberry Pi has fertilized the imaginations of the public, and it has brought with it a boom in inventive approaches to computing. If we'd be honest, there hasn't been anything like this since the good old days of 8-bit. Yo, it's time to get creative with your computing. Here's a quick rundown of interesting things you can do with this dude called Raspberry Pi. Replace your desktop PC with a Raspberry Pi. Looking at this stuff, it has no resemblance whatsoever with a desktop PC. I'm talking about size here. How exactly does this tiny little thing serve the purpose of a computer? Oh well, you can call it a mystery. It honestly isn't any mystery though. But Raspberry Pi can be used as a desktop computer. Along with the Pi itself, the microSD card, and a stable power supply, all you'll need is a high-definition multimedia cable and a suitable display. And as with a traditional computer, you'll need a USB keyboard and a mouse too. Print with your Raspberry Pi. Have an old printer that you really like using, but which cannot be connected to wirelessly? You're probably inclined to dispose of it safely, but you really don't need to. All you need is a Raspberry Pi connected to your home network and some print server software. This is done by installing the Samba file sharing software, followed by cups. The common Unix printing system provides drivers for your printer and provides an administration console. Once this is set up, configure the Pi to ensure any computers on your home network can access the printer. That's all there is to it. Keep in mind that this really depends on your printer having a USB cable. If it doesn't, adapters are available. Add AirPrint support to your Pi print server. The above project only takes things so far. It's ideal when printing from a Windows, Mac, or Linux computer, but what about tablets and phones? For that, you'll need AirPrint support, which can be added via a single script. Although printing is available natively on iOS devices, Android tablets and phones will require a dedicated app. Most new printers offer support for printing from mobile devices. With a Raspberry Pi, you can extend this functionality to older printers. Other projects you can tackle using Raspberry Pi include blocking ads on your network, making your own Twitter bot with Python and Raspberry Pi, setting up WordPress, and a lot more. Learning Raspberry Pi. There are kinds of questions you hear people ask when it comes to learning Raspberry Pi, such as, what exactly are we learning on Raspberry Pi? Gaming, coding, programming, or what exactly? Is learning restrictive on this computer? Can anyone learn? And things like that. Well, the first thing you should know is the goal of the Raspberry Pi project was primarily to build an inexpensive PC that is affordable by all. If we all have to break banks before we can own a computer, then we would have nowhere to store our money. Haha, that was on a lighter note, but you get the gist. Now you can get this PC that costs next to nothing and connect to your TV. That's if you don't have a TV screen. There are different versions available depending on your budget. So, in a nutshell, anyone can learn Raspberry Pi, and what you learn, basically, is programming. To get started, you need a Raspberry Pi, of course, a monitor with a high-definition multimedia HDMI input or converter from HDMI, a USB or Bluetooth keyboard, a USB or Bluetooth mouse, and a micro SD card, or SD card if you're using the Pi 2. Pi 3 can also use a USB flash drive instead of the micro SD card. An Ethernet cable can also be useful to direct connect to your network. You don't have to stress too much. All of the software can be downloaded online. Yes, there are a lot of add-ons of hardware you can purchase, but this will surely get you started. Where can you learn Raspberry Pi? Well, anybody can hit the internet to learn a thing or two about Raspberry Pis. I mean, there are hundreds and thousands of resources on the web, YouTube videos, online courses, and all of that. They're all ripe with excellent information on how to get started with Raspberry Pi. However, these 4 sites should be on the top of any new user's list. If you're ever going to learn fast and learn perfectly, you should check them out. raspberrypi.org. You guessed right, this is the official Raspberry Pi website, and it is definitely one of the best places to learn about getting started with Raspberry Pi. A lot of articles about specific projects link to the site for the very basic things you need to know, like installing Raspbian onto the Raspberry Pi. You can also find sample projects and courses that teach tech topics to students. If you ask me, I'll say this is just perfect for you. In no time, you'll be well grounded in the basics of Raspberry Pi. OpenSource.com. Another great platform for learning Raspberry Pi. On OpenSource.com, you can find a number of different Raspberry Pi project how-tos, getting started guided guides, success stories, updates, and more. Instructables and Hack Day. Do you want to build your own retro arcade gaming console? Or for your mirror to display weather information, the time, and the first event on the day's calendar? Are you looking to create a word clock or maybe a photo booth for a party? Chances are good that you'll find instructions on how to do all of this and more with a Raspberry Pi on site Instructables and Hack Day. If you're not sure if you should get a Raspberry Pi, browse these sites and you'll find plenty of reasons to buy one. Practical applications of Raspberry Pi in everyday life. The Raspberry Pi single-board computer and all its variants have captured the imaginations of DIY enthusiasts and budding hobbyists alike. And now that the price of the 2G Raspberry Pi 4 has been slashed to $35 and an 8GB model with as much RAM as a mini Mac is here, interest in building with the board is sure to spike. Much of the coverage you'll see around the web focuses on the more fantastical projects. Magic mirrors, portable gaming handhelds, intelligent drones, and so forth. And for good reason. Those maker masterpieces show what sort of power the $35 mini PC is capable of in the hands of someone with a little imagination and a bin full of spare electronics. Especially now that the Raspberry Pi 4 includes more RAM, a huge CPU upgrade, USB-C charging, and enough graphics horsepower to drive a pair of 4K monitors simultaneously. But most people, particularly beginners, won't use the Raspberry Pi to whip up crazy creations. There are near endless practical uses for the bare-bones kit. From media streaming, to giving smarts to a dumb TV, to extending the range of your Wi-Fi network, and a lot more. Yay, we've come to the end of today's video. You liked it? Then hit the like button and let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. For now, goodbye.